Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to return to the topic under debate, which is how this House will scrutinise the Brexit process. And to do that, I think we need to go back to first principles. What is the power and authority of this House? What is the sovereignty of Parliament, and where does it come from? And here I think I take a view that will be popular with the SNP, that I believe that the sovereignty of Parliament is delegated by the British people. We don't have sovereignty in this House in a vacuum. It is not that God suddenly created the House of Commons and said it will be sovereign over the United Kingdom. It is that the British people every 5 years delegate their sovereignty, their rights to us to implement as we see fit and present ourselves for re-election when that period is ended. Within that, we have had a referendum. And it is fascinating, we hear from all sides, from left, right and centre. We hear that everyone has accepted the result, that the will of the British people must be obeyed, respected, followed. The will of the people of the United Kingdom and Great Britain of Northern Ireland, which I'm glad to say includes the good people, indeed the crofters of Nihilling and Anyar. And that is something that needs to be put into practice. But we also know, because this is the legal advice that has gone unchallenged, that the only legal way of leaving the European Union is exercising Article 50. So we know that the vote on the 23rd of June was a vote to exercise Article 50. All that is at debate is the point at which that has done. The big decision has been taken, and has been taken by the British people. Of course I'll give way.
He and I are in rather similar positions. The Rhondda voted to leave, but I support remain. North East Somerset voted to remain, but he supported leave. Does he fully accept that, given what he said about sovereignty, that all of us in this House are not sent as delegates, we're here as representatives, and we owe to our constituents our conscience as much as our vote?
The honourable gentleman should check the record. Unfortunately, North East Somerset was not counted separately. We were infected by the votes of people in Bath. So I'm pretty confident that the wise people of rural Somerset voted to leave, whilst the urbanites in Bath voted to remain. But once Parliament has used that delegated authority to ask the people, who are our employers after all, what their will is, then that must be followed, and everybody is accepting that. So we come to the point of debating when will we put the notice under Article 50 to the European Council, so that they know that that is our decision. And that is properly something that is determined by the government. And this is where we get into the constitutional norms. Mr. Speaker, you have raised the standard of parliamentary scrutiny of the executive in the last 6 or 7 years to a proper height. And I am so strongly supportive of that continuing. We should all, particularly backbenchers on the governing party, remember that we are here to hold the government to account, not just willy-nilly to support it. But within that, we must recognise that there is a proper and constitutional sphere for government activity. There is, and long has been, a separation of powers. What the government does is introduces its policy, it introduces its legislation to get that policy through, and it has the clear responsibility for the negotiation of treaties. Against that, no government can exist unless it has the confidence of this House. At any day, if the Leader of the Opposition chooses to put down a vote of no confidence in Her Majesty's government, Mr. Speaker, as I understand it, you will take that motion urgently. And therefore, if there is any part of the negotiation, if there is any part of the discussion that takes place that this House resents or opposes, then the government may be removed and a new one put in its place. But that doesn't mean we should prevent the government exercising the proper role of the executive, because it is answerable to us in how it uses that power, and it's already been shown how often this happens. We have had 2 statements from the Brexit Secretary. We have a committee that has just been set up, voted for last night. That will hold both of the new departments, the 2 new departments, to account, that will have select committee hearings. As it happens, I think there will be a vote on Article 50. I wonder if I may draw the House's attention to Standing Order 143, 1.2 and 1.6, which provide for the type of documents that go to the European Scrutiny Committee for consideration. It is very hard to see that the exercise of Article 50 falls outside the definition listed in Standing Order 143. And it seems to me that the European Scrutiny Committee, which has the responsibility for determining what matters are of sufficient legal and political importance to be debated, would decide that the exercise of Article 50 did not meet that test for legal and political significance. So though it is right for the government to determine the date, though it is a proper exercise both of the prerogative and of the executive arm of our system, nonetheless, under our own standing orders, it will almost certainly come before this House, as will the other parts of the process. That the Great Repeal Bill is an interesting approach, but a very sensible one that the government has decided upon, because it gives certainty. We have heard calls for certainty from the opposition benches again and again, but making it clear, business certainty, the honourable gentleman calls out from Scunthorpe. So the voice of Scunthorpe speaks and calls from a height for certainty. And that is right, because business will have certainty, because the law will not change on the day we leave. All the laws will have been repatriated. They will be our laws rather than domesticated, as they currently are, through the European Communities Act 1972. It then becomes a matter for routine political debate as to whether we keep the regulations that have come from the European Union or whether we get rid of them. I have a feeling that I would want to get rid of rather more than members of the opposition would. But then I must put that to the electorate in North East Somerset. The honourable gentleman must put it to the electors of Scunthorpe, and we will find out what the people want. And that, Mr. Speaker, is the great prize of Brexit. For as we debate how this House will scrutinise, suddenly we're in charge of scrutinising everything. We haven't delegated our powers to Brussels to determine how we are regulated with a mere cursory glance over the top when the rules come pouring in. We have given back to this House the right to determine how we are governed, and therefore I think this motion is misplaced and misfires, because what it is suggesting is that there won't be proper scrutiny of the executive in the process of leaving, which is wrong. There is every step of the way going to be considerable scrutiny, which has already started, but it implies that the situation might be worse than it was before, when the reverse is true. We suddenly recapture that ancient power that we have had to seek redress of grievance because the government can't say not decided here, to legislate because our laws cannot be overturned by judges in a foreign land, and to hold the government to account on behalf of our electors. This is the great democratic prize, and it is from this that our prosperity will come, because we know that our prosperity does not exist in a vacuum. It comes because of the constitutional systems that we have that allow for stability for business, the rule of law, and for capitalism to flourish. When we are doing it for ourselves, that will be better, it will be stronger, and it will be more democratic.